For the first 8 to 10 years of my life, I admit that I was just like my mother. I didn't see color in the same way as others saw the color of my skin. I didn't feel color, and I knew nothing about the history or legacy of slavery, discrimination, stereotypes, or prejudice. Yeah, I noticed people looking at me funny, but my mother always told me something funny about the people who were staring, so they seemed to be the ones suffering from something. It was never me. My mom's inability to see color made me believe that no one else saw color either. I don't believe that her inability or lack of desire to say the word black came from a desire to hurt me or prevent my racial identity from developing. I doubt she thought in terms such as these. But my mother's inability to have a conversation with me early on in my life about who and what I was or how I would be classified by society prevented me from developing an awareness of how I would be treated and accepted and understood by a world that was just beginning to understand that race mixing was not going to make the world stop. While my mother demonstrated an inability to deal effectively or productively with certain aspects of raising a biracial child, I understand that the experience of other parents, caregivers, or family members raising biracial children will not always mimic that of mine or my mother. However, I do believe that there are some aspects of similar testimony and experiences that will resonate with biracial children, their families, and peers. It is for these individuals that I write this book. For instance, not only was my mother colorblind, but she also flat out lied to me the very first time I dared to ask her about the differences in our skin color. "Mommy, am I white?" You would think this question would trigger an enormous emotional upheaval for my very conservative mother. That probably would have been the best thing that could have happened, but it didn't happen that way. As you can guess, my mother resorted to what she knew and did best. My mother pulled down the well-maintained photo albums from the bookcase, and I was shown photos of my Hungarian uncle. In Hungarian, it's Nagyuba. He was dark like me, he had curly hair like me, his lips were thick, and his eyes were the very same hazel-green mixture, just like mine. He was Hungarian and spoke only Hungarian. There it was. That was the proof that I needed. I couldn't wait to go out and tell all of the disbelievers just how wrong they were. What I didn't know was that they had more ammunition than I did. And boy, did they hit me with every single round of it. There are too many people just like me who have witnessed firsthand all of the devastating power that the N-word has delivered. It is more than a dangerous word. Like any bullet or grenade, it can kill someone. Like a murderous attack, it can creep up on you no matter the strength of your defenses. Like a stealth bomber, you don't even feel it coming until it is too late. And in its murderous course, whether directed at me, near me, or delivered because of me, it always found a way to kill some part of me. So in situations like this, where I actually have a group of people gathered, I found it prior to developing a coaching business where I forcibly create an environment where it's safe, without fear and without judgment, to actually dialogue about diversity. I just want to open it up to find out, are there questions or issues that you feel you can't discuss out there that you'd like to discuss here? Share an opinion or a question or anything, because if so, this is absolutely the time to do it. So I open the floor up if anybody has any questions or anything, experiences that they want to share or talk about. No?
Oh, go ahead. I have a quick story that jumped out at me when you said that. When Obama was elected, my mother and I had this conversation over the phone. I said, it's amazing to me, and I was born in the 1950s, and I said, it was inconceivable, when I grew up, not only for a black person to be president. And she said, I have a story to tell you. In 1942, my mother and my grandmother, my mother was 18, went on a bus trip from Philadelphia to Florida. And my grandfather had already died, and here were these two, again, white women, on the bus. And when they got to D.C., the driver stood up, and I will never ever use that word. He used the N-word. He said, all you, and he used the N-word to get to the back of the bus. My mother stood up and said to my grandmother, come on, we're moving to the back of the bus too. And I said, what did the driver say? And they did, they moved. And I said, what did the driver say? Nothing. What did the passengers say? Nothing. But she said, since it was 1942 during World War II, there were a lot of military personnel on the bus. And at every stop, they surrounded my mother and my grandmother to protect them from angry white passengers.
Wow.
And I never knew that about my mother until recently. And I grew up in, I can't say colorblind family, but we had friends all, from all different nationalities, all different skin tones. And I mentioned to you I've been a foster parent for a black child when he was little, and I can only imagine what that's. And my son's best friend is biracial. His mom's white, his dad's black. And I don't know how Elazar identifies himself, but my son quit a job because the manager threw around the air. He said, I can't work there. So how is it for somebody, like, does it really matter how you identify yourself other than as Tiffany? Do you feel a claim to either or both?
Well, it absolutely matters. And I guess for me personally, I didn't know it was okay to be biracial. Every single day until the last 4 or 5 years of my life, it was so important for me to make sure everybody around me was comfortable with me. And because most of the people, up until the time I went away to an international all-girls boarding school where there were only 36 of us from the States, everyone was from every other country and of every different skin tone. And like, I was walking up and down the hallways looking at girls as if they were in a museum and on display, because I was like, what? But up until that point, I identified culturally as white. That's all, and Hungarian specifically, and that's all I knew. That was right for me. And I go on in Colorblind to discuss the instances where I chose to kind of step out and experience other things that maybe weren't considered so white when I was being raised. And every time that happened, my mother or people around me shot me down and made me feel like, oh, I should never do that. And so it's only, again, since I started delving into what it actually meant for me to be biracial. What does that mean? No longer do I have to deny one part of me to make somebody else feel comfortable. And that has absolutely changed me as a woman, as a biracial woman, as somebody who has something to share with people impacting the lives of other biracial children. Because biracial people shouldn't have to choose. I mean, a lot of people find it very hard to understand a true biracial experience. And unless biracial children are born to biracial parents, their monoracial parents will never understand the very unique experiences, challenges, and obstacles that their biracial children will experience just because of the color of their skin as viewed by society. So I think, you know, it's really important to keep that in mind, because if monoracial parents aren't dialoguing, if they were anything like my mother and refused to, it's one thing to bring children into your home either through marriage, natural union, or adoption, and just have so much love that you want to protect your child. I absolutely get it, but you're not protecting them if you aren't encouraging them and empowering them and teaching them about what their color means to other people who could potentially harm them. So, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that story. Anyone else? Okay, well, I thank you very much.